Dear all, it is a pleasure and an honor on behalf of the University of Bergen to welcome you to this year's announcement of the Holberg Prize and the Nils Klim Prize. This year's announcement takes place against the backdrop of a global order that appears more unstable than most of us could have imagined only a few years ago. We are living in one of the most conflict-ridden periods since World War II. The international development underscores why it is more important than ever for the universities to hold fast to and safeguard the values of academic freedom and independent research. Independent and strong research are the core ideals underlying both the Holberg Prize and the Nils Klim Prize. The Holberg Prize was established by the Norwegian Parliament in 2003 as an international research prize, recognizing outstanding scholarship in the humanities, social sciences, law, and theology. Ever since its establishment, the prize has been awarded annually to scholars who have made an exceptional contribution in these fields. The prize is administered by the University of Bergen on behalf of the Norwegian Ministry of Education and Research. The Holberg Prize is named after Ludvig Holberg, who grew up here in Bergen. He was a writer, he was a historian, he was a humanist, and a sharp critic of public censorship. In addition to the Holberg Prize, the Holberg Board also awarded the Nils Klim Prize, given to young researchers from Nordic countries who excel in the same academic disciplines. At a time when knowledge is increasingly instrumentalized, these prizes and the academic disciplines covered by the prize affirm how crucial critical thinking and research truly are. Independent research not only makes our societies more resilient against disinformation and demagoguery, it also offers vital early warnings that provide room for action before crises strike. Research can do so precisely because it challenges the taken for granted, reveals new perspectives, offers historical depth, and creates spaces for fresh interpretations, and in doing so, it helps us to understand the complexities of our time, question established assumptions, and imagine alternative futures and solutions that might otherwise remain unseen. With this, it is my great pleasure to give the floor to the chair of the Holberg Board, Professor Jørgen Sejersted, who will announce the Holberg Prize laureates for the year 2026.
Well, thank you, Professor Margareth Hagen, the Rector of the University of Bergen. The Holberg Prize, as we heard, was established by the Norwegian Parliament in 2003 and was awarded for the first time in 2004. Each year, the Holberg Board awards 2 prizes in the academic fields of the humanities, social sciences, law, and theology. These 2 prizes are the International Holberg Prize and the Nordic Nils Klim Prize. In 2026, these prizes will both be awarded for the 23rd time. The prizes are awarded by the Holberg Board on behalf of the University of Bergen and the Norwegian government, and on the recommendation of academic committees. The academic committees consist of internationally renowned scholars from relevant disciplines. The prizes celebrate groundbreaking academic achievements. The award ceremony for the Holberg Prize and the Nils Klim Prize takes place in Bergen in June every year. This year's award ceremony will be held here at the University Aula at the 4th of June. And now, first to the Holberg Prize, awarded annually to scholars who have made outstanding contributions to research either within one discipline or through interdisciplinary work. The prize is named, as we heard, after the Danish-Norwegian scholar Ludvig Holberg, who was an exceptional writer and intellectual of the 18th century. The value of the prize is 6 million Norwegian kroner. On behalf of the University of Bergen and on the recommendation of the Holberg Committee, it is a great pleasure for me to announce that the board of the Holberg Prize has decided that this year's Holberg Prize shall be awarded to Professor Lyndall Roper. Professor Lyndall Roper is an Australian historian of early modern Europe. A graduate from the University of Melbourne, she studied at the University of Tübingen and King's College in London, where she completed her PhD in 1985. Professor Roper has worked at King's College and Royal Holloway, University of London, where she set up the Bedford Centre for Women's History with Amanda Vickery in 1999, and at Balliol College, Oxford. In 2011, she became the Regius Professor of History at Oxford. Lyndall Roper has held visiting positions in several Australian and German universities. She is an international esteemed historian who has published seminal works on women and the Reformation, witchcraft, the sexuality of the 16th century. In 2016, she published a biography of the reformer Martin Luther, and last year, a history of the German Peasants' War of the 1500s. She holds several honorary doctorates and fellowships. Chair of the Holberg Committee, Professor Anne Phoenix of University College London, will now present the committee's review of the contributions of Lyndall Roper's work.
Lyndall Roper is one of the foremost scholars of early modern Europe and an outstandingly original historian. Born in Melbourne, Australia in 1956, Professor Lyndall Roper was the first woman and the first Australian appointed to the Regius Chair of History at Oxford University, United Kingdom. After studying at the universities of Melbourne and Tübingen, Germany, she gained a PhD in history from King's College London and worked at Royal Holloway, University of London. She is an elected fellow of several national academies, including the Berlin-Brandenburg Academy of Sciences and Humanities. Roper is one of the pioneers of cultural and social history research in 3 areas: the witch hunts of the Reformation era, the Peasants' War, and previously unexplored aspects of Martin Luther's biography. Her work is path-breaking in its combining of gender, embodiment, and psychosocial history. Roper's witty, vibrant, and evocative writing style is both empirically rigorous and theoretically sophisticated. It speaks to a broad, international, interdisciplinary readership and resonates with the contemporary context. Roper's numerous publications include the 1989 Holy Household, examining the effects of the Reformation on gender relations, and the scope for action open to women in a 16th century imperial city. Her publications on witches, including Witch Craze, Terror and Fantasy in Baroque Germany, 2004, and The Witch in Western Imagination, 2012, have shifted popular understandings. Roper shows that witches were central to the ways in which early modern society imagined itself, so studying them illuminates societal beliefs, fears, and hopes. Her biographical work, including the 2012 Der Feiste Doktor, and Martin Luther, Renegade and Prophet 2016, is equally transformative. Roper's examination of Luther's use of vulgar language, as well as his verbal pugilism, rampant anti-Semitism, physicality, and self-presentation, helps to explain his theology in new ways. Her most recent book, Summer of Fire and Blood, The German Peasants' War, won the 2025 Kundil History Prize. Roper's psychohistorical approach challenges previously established assumptions about early modernity. Her analysis of both the body and the psyche of historical actors has influenced the broad discipline of history and historical methodology. In recognition of her inspiring, dynamic teaching and generous support of graduate students and early career researchers, the Faculty of History have established the Regius Prize for the best piece of historical research by an early career or fixed-term researcher at the University of Oxford. She is internationally celebrated for her ability to communicate historical findings to expert and broader audiences. Lyndall Roper is a highly worthy recipient of the 2026 Holberg Prize.
Hi, my name's Lyndall Roper and I'm a historian of 16th and 17th century Germany. We're standing outside the Schwarzmann building at the University of Oxford. It's a fabulous new building that's just opened for the humanities. And it just so happened that I was walking along the street here outside when I saw I had a missed call. So I rang back, and that's when I heard that I had won the Holberg Prize. It's an amazing honour. I found it very hard to take in, but I'm so grateful and I'm just delighted for what it means for the humanities and for the history of the 16th and 17th centuries. The Holberg Prize is a really important thing, especially at the moment when I think the humanities feel under attack. And to have a prize that's there to celebrate intellectual creativity, I think is a wonderful thing to have, especially now when it's important, perhaps more than ever, because what the humanities do is that they teach how to think critically, how to examine evidence, how to think about the relationship between evidence and argument, and how to think in an original and creative way. And we need that more than ever in the age of AI, so that we can see how to use AI and make something out of all the possibilities that it offers. What's always interested me is getting away from what we might call the grand narratives, all about battles and big states, kings and queens. That wasn't my thing. I wanted to get in the voices of ordinary people, and in particular, the voices of women. Gender has always been part of what I'm interested in as a historian. I wanted to know about women's lives in the past. So I've written about witchcraft, and there I was interested not so much in witchcraft, but in, these are extraordinary sources where you get to encounter women of the 16th and 17th centuries and to hear their voices, hear their words. And that's what fascinated me about that. I've worked on the reformer Martin Luther, and I've just finished writing a book about the German Peasants' War of 1525, which celebrated its 500th anniversary this year. And there I was interested in what makes people take the risk of rebelling against the authorities. What makes them risk everything that they own, even risking their lives? And I wanted to ask the really simple question of what does it feel like to be involved in a revolution? What does it feel like to walk with hundreds, thousands of others and to eat together, to sleep outdoors under the stars, and then take on the Lords. I'm absolutely delighted to have won the prize, and I'm looking forward very much to seeing you in June and to a wonderful week of events where we celebrate what the humanities and humanities scholars are doing now. And with any luck, it'll be less windy than it is in Oxford at the moment. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Professor Anne Phoenix, and a big congratulations to Professor Lyndall Roper, Holberg Prize Laureate of 2026. And now to the Nils Klim Prize. The prize is awarded annually to a researcher under 40 years of age. The prize is named after the protagonist of Ludwig Holberg's utopian novel, Nils Klim's Underground Travels of 1741. The researcher must be from or work in a Nordic country in the fields covered by the Holberg Prize. The prize is awarded to researchers who have made outstanding contributions, either within one discipline or through interdisciplinary work. In the assessment of the nominated candidate, the independence and innovative qualities of the researcher's work are deemed particularly important. The committee also takes into account whether the research contribution is especially outstanding or promising in light of the scholar's age, the nature of the research project, and the traditions in the researcher's academic field. The value of the prize is 500,000 Norwegian kroner. On behalf of the University of Bergen and on the recommendation of the Nils Klim Committee, it is now my great pleasure to announce that the board of the Holberg Prize has decided that this year's Nils Klim Prize shall be awarded to Associate Professor Maise Lind of Aalborg University, Denmark. Dr. Maise Lind is Associate Professor at the Department of Culture and Communication at the Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities at Aalborg University. She holds a PhD in Psychology and Behavioral Sciences from Aarhus University, 2018. She has held postdoctoral positions at Northeastern University in Boston and at the University of Florida, before joining Aalborg University, where she has been Associate Professor of Psychology since August 2025. Her research investigates identity at the intersection of personality development and personality pathology, with particular focus on narrative identity. Dr. Lind leads several research projects funded by the Independent Research Fund of Denmark and the Carlsberg Foundation. She serves as president-elect of the International Society for the Study of Personality Disorders and chairs its Internationalization Committee. She has published international books and peer-reviewed articles in leading journals in her field, and she has received national and international awards for her research on personality disorders and narrative identity. The chair of the Nils Klim Committee, Professor Andreas Føllesdal of the University of Oslo, will now present the committee's review of the contributions of Maise Lind's work. Professor Føllesdal's review will be followed by a greeting from Minister of Research and Higher Education, Sigrun Aasland.
The Nils Klim Committee recommends that Associate Professor of Clinical Psychology Maise Lind at Aalborg University receive the 2026 Nils Klim Prize. Lind's original and innovative academic contributions meet all the criteria of the prize to a remarkable degree. Lind contributes to urgent issues of mental health, how to understand, discover, and address personality disorders, especially among adolescents, but also among the elderly. Identity distress is on the rise, and its causes and treatments merit much more public attention. Lind's research shows how narrative life stories can overcome dysfunctional self-understanding and psychological suffering. Interventions can help individuals create meaning, continuity, and purpose, phenomenological traits of identity formation, and about what it means to be human. Applications range from detecting personality pathologies among young people to maintaining a sense of self among older adults with memory loss. The committee underscores how Lind draws from and contributes to interdisciplinary insights across social sciences and humanities, including the fields of narration and the life stories people construct and reconstruct about their past, present, and presumed future. Her research shows the importance of social networks in autobiographical memories of life traumas and treatments. Lin also pioneers the use of AI to detect early signs of narrative identity disturbances to enable crucial early-stage interventions. Lin's contributions inform changes to diagnostic tools and clinical treatments for mental illnesses in both young and old. Her impressive list of more than 50 publications includes many in top-ranking journals of her field, and often with her as first author. She has also co-authored the book Storying Mental Illness and Personal Recovery, Cambridge University Press, 2023. Born in 1989, Lind received her PhD degree in psychology from Aarhus University in 2018. She has since held 2 postdoctoral positions in the USA, one at the University of Florida and one at Northeastern University. She was appointed assistant professor in 2022 and associate professor in 2025. That same year, she received her clinical authorization. Lind has also shown great research leadership exemplified by several research projects. And in particular, she has co-founded and co-directs the interdisciplinary AI Mind Lab, helping young people better express themselves regarding identity-related distress. The committee finds Associate Professor Maise Lind a most worthy recipient of the Nils Klim Prize for her outstanding, original, innovative, and interdisciplinary contributions to psychological research on topics of the utmost importance in the Nordic countries and beyond.
The Holberg Prize celebrates the humanities, social sciences, law and theology. These fields are essential for understanding our world. They strengthen our ability to ask important questions, to think critically, and see the forces that shape our societies. This is especially important in a time with fast changes and unpredictability. Dear Professor Roper, I congratulate you on being awarded the 2026 Holberg Prize. Your research offers valuable insights into themes such as gender, power, fear, belief, and society's perception of the other. Your contributions are both inspiring and highly relevant today. I would also like to congratulate Assistant Professor Maise Lind on receiving this year's Nils Klim Prize. Your work on youth, identity, and mental health provides new and essential knowledge in an area that affects many and plays a vital role in society. Scholars like you both play a key role in our democracy. You challenge us, you educate us, and step by step, you bring our societies forward. With the Holberg Prize and the Nils Klim Prize, our aim is to ensure that such knowledge continues to grow and inspire others. My warmest congratulations to both laureates. I look forward to welcoming you to Norway and to Bergen in June.
Thank you to Professor Føllesdal for presenting the committee's review. Thank you to the Minister for her greeting to the laureates. And last but not least, thank you to Benedicte Mauseth for having provided us with two beautiful musical pieces today. First, Vårjamdøger, Mauseth's own composition, and then just now Springar, a traditional as played by Ola Hostabø. We now move on in our program, and I'm happy to welcome Academic Director of the Holberg Prize, Professor Bjørn Enge Bertelsen, who will moderate a brief conversation about our two prize laureates, with Professor of History, Gunnar Vinsnes Knudsen, and Professor of Psychology, Per Einar Binder, both of the University of Bergen. Please, Bjørn.
Thank you very much for that, Jørgen, and welcome onto the stage from me as well to Professor Gunnar Vinsnes Knudsen to my left and Professor Einar Binder to also my left. Welcome both of you. We have a bit of time, but not much. We'll hold you here until almost 10 o'clock, but I hope in that period that we can get to know other sides or additional sides also of our two laureates. So let us start by talking a bit about the Holberg Prize laureate first. And in that regard, I'm really happy to have with me here Professor Gunnar Vinsnes Knudsen. Knudsen works at the Department of Archaeology, History, Cultural Studies and Religion here at the University of Bergen. A historian, as our Holberg Prize laureate as well, Knudsen has worked on Norwegian and European history with an emphasis on the connection between belief and action. He is also focused on the themes of the witchcraft trials, the Spanish Inquisition, and the wars of religion. So, in a sense, you've worked on many of the same fields as our Holberg Prize laureate. So, welcome to you. So, as we also heard from the committee, the 2026 Holberg Prize laureate is an outstanding scholar in her work as a historian. Could you provide us with a bit of in-depth knowledge as to what those fields are and what her research is oriented around? Could you elaborate a bit for us?
Yes, I will try. I mean, she already, and Professor Phoenix also said some of what I was prepared to say. She's an early modern historian. That means that she works in the period roughly 1500 till 1800, 16th and 17th centuries, as she said. She works on Germany, and sort of the two main focuses have been the Reformation on one hand and witchcraft trials on the other. Always with a gender perspective. Starting with a study of how the Reformation changed gender roles and household structure in Augsburg in Germany. Then she moved on to the study of witchcraft trials, writing the classic witch craze, which we have often used in teaching here at the University of Bergen, so I'm very happy to see her. And then she moved back to the Reformation again with a study of Martin Luther, preceded by a number of articles. So she worked on this, and as she works on everything, for a number of years. She's not somebody who produces a new book every year or every second year. She works for 8, 10 years on each monograph, which means that they are incredibly well-researched and solid works. And then her latest book, sort of following naturally on Martin Luther, is The German Peasants' War, of people who took Martin Luther a bit too seriously. And I thought that he actually meant what he said in the most extreme and radical form, which of course he found out that he did not.
No, because he didn't recognize the...
No, he told the lords to kill them like mad dogs.
Yeah.
So that's what you get for believing too firmly in the prophet.
Yeah.
But what has made her famous is her use of insight from psychology and psychoanalytic theory on history. And that is something that historians are loath to do, because then you move quite far from what you can empirically prove and to what many historians will think is too speculative. But she does this in a manner that is very convincing, and she does it by grounding her use on theory on extensive archival research. Yeah, I think that probably sums it up.
So in a sense, I mean, with her use of insights from psychology or certain types of psychology in a sense in her historical research, could you say that she has shaped or reshaped or in a sense influenced the historical research in that era of the 1500s?
Yeah. It's a tough question, because on the one hand, I think that she's unique. I think you will be hard-pressed to find any historian who manages to combine such a deep insight into psychology and theories of psychology, from Sigmund Freud to Melanie Klein, and on the other hand, does such extensive and deep and intensive archival work. Also exploring the physical landscape. For her latest book, she cycled 600 kilometers to study the landscape in which this war took place. And so this combination here is, in many ways, unique, I think. On the other hand, her view of how the Reformation shaped gender roles has completely changed our view of the Reformation and its effects. Her book on witchcraft trials has brought us much closer to an understanding of the witch's experience. And central to her research is this attempt to capture the individual in history and see his or her experiences, their subjective experience, their emotional experience, and how they came to express these things that we see that they have said and written. And also how the sheer fact of having a physical body changes your perception or forms your perception of the world and your experience of being alive and your experience of history. And this certainly has colored later historical writings. I mean, we have a much better, we pay more attention to the physicality of the historical persons. I think she changed our view of Martin Luther by not writing simply about this great intellectual who translated the Bible into Germany, but also about this man who suffered terrible constipation, who wrote a lot about farting, especially at the devil, his enjoyment of food and drinking, telling people to enjoy eating, drinking with friends, and having sex.
It's very interesting, because she really puts, I mean, a number of aspects of historical writing back into her research, which, from some perspectives at least, has not been very influential, such as the body, as you just mentioned in the example of Martin Luther and her work on the corporality of Martin Luther as something that we should pay attention to, but also movement through the landscape, for instance. And also, as you said, this is my interpretation at least, I mean, she doesn't only write history from below, which is a long-standing approach, of course, in the discipline of history, but also she works to recuperate individual life stories, in a sense.
And that is not so original as the attempt to try to recuperate their subjectivity, their experience, on a personal, individual level, which is something that has been more typical of biographies, if anything. So historians typically, when they write history from below, they write about collectives. We write about mentalities, we write about culture, we write about shared expectations, about shared experiences, and shared frames of interpretation. And she tries to go into the individual. What did he or she experience? And some of it is also a bit contested and surprising. For example, this bond between the torturer and the person being tortured. Because, as she rightly says, and I hadn't thought about this before I read her, that, of course, there is an intimacy here. And there is a touch, and there is a constant touch, and the execution officer examines the body of the person being touched, and that creates a psychological bond. And they frequently also have a shared interest, which is to get this over with as soon as possible. And that creates a relationship which is incredibly complex. It contains elements of sadism, perhaps some masochism, who knows. But there is an intense emotional bond, and since these victims of torture were frequently isolated outside of the torture room, this is the one person that they really communicate with. And I think that is an incredibly important insight.
So therein, in a sense, lies some of her more, how should I put it, daring or controversial elements as well, this kind of violent intimacy or the kind of exploration of this relation that you mentioned.
Yeah, and you have two words here. You have daring and you have controversial. And I would say she is very daring because historians are afraid of theory. And historians are also afraid of putting into, at least their text, perhaps they can speak a bit more freely, but into the text, things that they cannot say they have taken from the sources. And too much theorizing then becomes speculation. And she's daring there, that she stretches this quite far, convincingly, but daringly, which is one of the reasons why not many others have dared to do so after her, so to speak. Controversial, I would say no, not now, but perhaps 30 years ago. But over 30 years, she has developed as a historian, as a writer. We have grown accustomed to this way of seeing, and I can just say that my first reading of one of her books was I was completely unconvinced. I did not like it at all. I read it again 4 years later, and I thought this is actually very good and very sympathetic, and I like this.
Okay, so you moved to become a convert.
Yes, but I think that may be representative of the discipline as a whole. And some of the most important books are like that. You first reject them, and then you grow to accept them.
Excellent, thank you, Gunnar. I have lots of questions, and I'm sure you all have, and we all look forward to June. But we now move on to talk a bit with Professor Einar Binder here about our Nils Klim laureate as well. Per Einar Binder is Professor of Psychology, also here at the University of Bergen. He's particularly worked with qualitative research on psychotherapy processes, recovery and change, as well as the fields of existential psychotherapy and theoretical and philosophical psychology. Binder combines his research with clinical practice as a psychotherapist and has published on existential vulnerability and the conditions under which individuals struggle to maintain a coherent and honest sense of self, themes that again resonates very closely with our laureate, in this case our Nils Klim Prize laureate, Professor Meise Lind. So welcome to you as well, and I'll start with the same kind of question as I did to Gunnar here. I mean, undoubtedly, the Nils Klim Prize laureate is an outstanding young scholar in her field in several ways. Could you provide us with a bit of knowledge about what those fields are, or in what way she's outstanding?
Yes, I think the important part to start with is the concept of narrative identity. And she studies how the ways that we make sense of our pasts, how we have different life chapters. We can organize our life into chapters if we want to. And she studies how people do that. And that we have ambitions, we have needs, we have a future. And this future chapters is also something that defines us. So in some ways, we are our narratives and the stories that we tell about our lives. And these stories have some different qualities that are very important. One quality is coherence. Mm-hmm. Is it possible for you to find a coherent story and create a coherent story about your life? And is there a place for agency in your story? Mm-hmm. Or are you more like a victim? Mm-hmm. Or is it possible to fit in? Is it possible to build communion in your story? So these kinds of topics is something that she studies in different contexts. So one of the contexts is psychopathology, like borderline personality disorders, where you find that people struggle to get coherence in their stories, and often they become victims in their stories. They don't find agency there. And she also studies this with the normal population. She is interested in the life stories of people in the late middle age, how they also, when they have place for agency and communion, they're less depressed. So she studied that through the study was lasted for 9 years. So you could see development in this kind of tips. So yes, so she is into many areas here. Also, of course, adolescence and how we start to make our life stories, and that's a sensitive period, because if you got trouble with making sense of yourself these years, that can, become more trouble later on. It can also be a risk for personality disorders. So yes, she has a very broad view.
It's very interesting also when I look at her work, I also see that she's very influenced by the broader humanities, in a sense. I mean, existential philosophy, phenomenology. Could you, and this is something that one may not perhaps think would be important to the field of psychology, both in terms of clinical work and in terms of more academic research. Could you elaborate on the kind of inspiration she draws from those kinds of fields in her work?
Yes, and Paul Ricoeur is very important as a background here. She doesn't always mention that explicit, but you can sense that it is there. And what she brings into, for instance, personality psychology, because personality psychology is very concerned with traits, like the big five, like neuroticism, agreeableness, extroversion, openness, that kind of traits. And she says, that's not enough. You also have to study how this person is an author in his or her life, and how she narrates about her life. And this is also something that can predict mental health in ways that traits alone cannot. So this more humanistic view adds something, this view on meaning making adds something very important, and of course also into personality disorders, because you can look at personality disorders as a range of symptoms, and up till now you often have looked at it as some symptoms that you either have or have not. Now you're starting to have a more dimensional view. You can function better or worse. One important thing here is also then identity, and that you feel that you have coherence in who you are.
I mean, as mentioned here, I mean, there is a broader societal significance to Lind's research. Could you elaborate very briefly on what those would be?
Yes, just now there is an identity crisis going on in society, and of course this has been described decades ago by Giddens, for instance, and that late modernity make a lot of pressure on the individual to create their own selves in a way. This has been even tougher now with social media, with the different kind of selves that you have to manage and handle and navigate between. And we see people with more identity issues than earlier on. That describes in many areas like the man's crisis. That's very much an identity crisis. And it's when you come to young people, also lacking cultural scripts. She's interested in how we have cultural scripts about how to be a person in society, with how you find a partner, that you get an education in certain ways, and that when she studies, for instance, borderline personality disorder, she finds that they struggle to get into those kind of scripts. So in this way, she have a view both on society and how people struggle to fit into society and make meaning in the ways that you need in a society, and how perhaps also our society struggle to help people with narratives that can help them to create meaning in their lives.
Thanks a lot. I mean, there are lots of commonalities there between the two. There is the notion of agency, which I think you also find with Roper. There is the concern with narratives, storying, history making. There is the concern with the individual and coherence. I mean, all of this makes me very much look forward to June, where we'll have ample time to discuss this. Sadly, our time here is running out, and I would like to thank you very much, Per Einar and Gunder, for shedding light on these two laureates of 2026. And I'm also happy to say that those of you who read Norwegian will be able to read op-eds by both of you published later today, so you can all watch that as well. But thank you very much.
Thank you to Professors Bertelsen, Vinsnes Knudsen, and Binder for a very enlightening conversation on the laureates of 2026. Let me remind the audience that the award ceremonies and other events related to the Holberg Prize will take place here in Bergen from the first week of June. To conclude, and on behalf of the Holberg Board, I would like to extend my warmest congratulations to Professor Lyndal Roper and Dr. Meise Lind on being awarded their respective prizes. Thank you to all those attending the ceremony today and to those watching around the world. Thank you.